2 summers ago, I think it was 2 summers ago, it might have been 3, I took my 2 children, who would have been 11 and 8, to the Fort Lorraine Museum on a warm July afternoon for a little bit of culture. Good thing about taking your kids to a museum is you immediately feel like a better parent. These kids are going to be well adjusted, they're getting out of the house, they're learning about history. And so we went from display to display, from building to building, and I was totally surprised when I walked into what my grandpa would have called a machine shed, basically a garage. And we walked in, and it wasn't just the sights, and there were sights that reminded me of his machine shed, like a Gulf. You remember the Gulf oil company? Like a tin-stamped advertisement. There was a old tractor, maybe it was a fire engine, I'm not sure. I can tell the difference between a tractor and a fire engine, just for the record. The smell, though, you know how smells take you back, right? And immediately, I remembered being just this little boy in Grandpa's house. And my grandpa's been dead about 10, 11 years, so it was a pretty powerful moment. And the kids noticed. They're like, Dad, what's wrong? And the thing is, what I didn't do is at like 5 years old in the machine shed, think to myself, Grandpa's not always going to be here. Breathe deep, take this all in, freeze frame it in your mind so that it comes back to you in some moment and you get to remember your grandpa. It just never would occur to somebody who's 6 or 7 years old, but it still was a part of who I was. These things just kind of creep into our bones, and you'll find that, I'm sure, at Christmas. Maybe some of these carols have already triggered something for you. And that's happened just almost like subconsciously. You're just brought right back there. So I wonder if, since that happens subconsciously, if we can find a way to do it tonight consciously. And what I want to do is have your attention so fixed on this candle, and eventually the wax that will be dripping down it, so that every time you see a candle going forward, you will think 3 different thoughts. Each of them very comforting, very reassuring, and very grounded. So, here we go. 3 stories about candles, 3 stories about wax to forever change how you experience a candle. First story. About 8 years ago, I think it was 8 years ago, I got into cross-country skiing, like really into it. Started to go to races every now and then and really paying attention to that whole sport. It was a surprise to my wife because she remembers me so frustrated after a weekend at Elkhorn Lodge where we tried the rental skis and just literally coming back and throwing them in the closet going, I'm never, ever going near these things again. My brother-in-law used to take me, and I try to avoid it. It's the last thing I wanted to do, and now here I am all of a sudden right into it. But here's what went wrong on the first few experiences. I would have these skis on, and I'd be like running in place, just, no traction at all. Or if we got to a hill, I'd be flying down it. Another time, when I'd go, it would be like I'm standing on the hill with no glide at all, like I'm kind of standing on 60 grit sandpaper. Just a useless sport. What I didn't realize, and this is what we skiers say, it's a great excuse, my wax was all wrong. See, if you put your ski like this, there's what's called a kick zone, like roughly from your heel to your toe. And it's very important what you put under your ski there, because when your ski compresses, that's what has to bond with the snow just for a second so that when you kick your foot back, you actually have some traction, otherwise you're just like on a treadmill. But woe to you if you have an extended kick zone or you have put on the wrong wax. Then your friends will be careening down the hill and you'll be just standing there kind of trying to move, getting very sore in your shoulders. You need the right wax to be standing on so that you have both traction and momentum. Very important what you're standing on. To navigate through life, to avoid disaster, to turn when you're about to barrel into something, to change your trajectory into something beautiful. May you, from now on, when you see a candle, ask yourself this question: what am I standing on? Second question. Now remember, we're concentrating. We're trying to burn this into our minds, okay? Years from now, you see a candle and you go, what am I standing on? Second story. Wax, actually, in Old English, didn't just mean like candle wax. It meant like to become something. It was like a verb or an adverb. I'm not sure what the right grammatic term is for it. But you would become something. You would grow into something. So you would wax old, right? Or wax angry. Or you could even, like if you're putting on weight, you could wax fatter. So this will be helpful later when we get to the question about the candle. But for now, it's also helpful because you've just found a way to insult somebody and they may not know it. You can tell them they're waxing large, and they'll feel like royalty when you've really just told them they're putting on weight. We all become something. We're all waxing into something every single day of your life. Everything you do does something to you. Everything. And actually, we're going to be talking about this here in January, and you're welcome to join us on Sunday mornings. May you, when you look at a candle and you have wax dripping off of it, forever, now, always, ask yourself the question, what am I becoming? And the final story about wax. In ancient times, and still today probably in some formal ways, they will take wax and they will drip it onto like an envelope or something. You've seen this done, I'm sure. And it seals the document or the package, and there's often like a ring with an imprint on it. And they'll press that in, and the ring will imprint on the seal of wax emblem that designates ownership of the document. So you don't mess with the document, you don't tamper with the document because it's owned by somebody, usually somebody impressive enough to have a seal. May you, when you look at a candle, when you think about wax, ask yourself, who do I belong to? Now those three questions, what am I standing on? What am I becoming? Who do I belong to? For Christians, they're all answered by the same word. I stand on Jesus. I am becoming like Jesus, and I belong to Jesus. Our momentum and our grip, our identity and our security forever and always are held by that name. So for many of us now, when we look at a candle, there's tremendous comfort in store. And then there's others, and I know that you're here because Carols by Candlelight, it just brings out lots of people for good music, and you're excited about the music, but you kind of hope they don't go there. And there is where I just went. Please, just don't go there. So let me give for you a story. You don't actually have to think about those last three. This is the starter story. The baby Jesus, Jesus Christ, who comes at Christmas and comes from above and meets us in the most simple and vulnerable of ways, he grows up to be the crucified Jesus. The rebel king who dies with the sign over his head says, here's the king of the Jews. And in a moment of exquisite, painful torture, he says some things. He says it is finished. He looks at his mom and he says, take care of her. But he also says, my God, why have you forsaken me? And at first glance, it sounds like he's kind of given up. He's like, where is God in this moment for me? This is terrible. And there's definitely part of that. But those who have ears to hear him, those who know the poem that he's quoting, immediately go back to Psalm 22 from the first part of the Bible. Jesus often, and rabbinical teachers would do this, they would just quote a line of something and it would kind of give you the whole gist. The line, my God, why have you forsaken me, comes from Psalm 22. And the whole thing is of this beautiful redemptive pattern that blesses many people through one person's suffering. But in the very middle of that poem, and here's our wax moment. The very middle of the poem is this line, very fitting. It says, my bones are out of joint and my heart melts like wax. So maybe those first 3 stories don't work for you because you don't know that there's a God whose heart melts for you. And so now may you, every time that you see a candle, every time you spill wax, every time you smell the smoke, may you know always there is a God whose heart melts for you.